Okay, so this is the Champion 2500 watt generator. It's dual fuel, and you can see it's running off propane right now. I wanted to talk to you about this. I really love this generator. I love Champion even more. I mean, it's just people tell you to get a Honda. I've had a Honda sitting next to a Champion. It was only gas, not dual fuel, and it was just as quiet as the Honda. I mean, they say the Honda's a little bit more quiet, but I couldn't tell a difference. Every Champion I've had lasts for years. The last one I had lasted, I think, 8,000 hours is what I said. So this one's dual fuel. Yeah, so it runs off propane. It comes with this handy little hose that hooks it all up and snaps in. I told everybody if you wanted one, you better have gotten one a few months ago. During the summer, they had this huge sale on it. It was really cheap. It was like 400 bucks. The other day, I needed to start the generator because it was so cloudy. It was cloudy for a week. But I needed to change the oil in my little generator. I got this little one because it uses less gasoline. Of course, it can't power hardly anything, but it's enough to run the battery chargers. So it was raining, and I didn't feel like changing the oil in it, even though it needed oil change. This one's 1500 watts. And it's a tad bit louder than that big one. So I pulled that big one out. It's always been hard to start on propane. When I got it, I knew it was going to be difficult. So I've been storing this for probably since the beginning of summer. I don't think I have ran it until just the other day. So I hooked it up to propane. Now, the reason I hooked it up to propane is because I didn't want to put gas in it. Because as gas sits in a tank over a period of time, it'll go bad. Now, I know people say, well, I leave gas in my car all the time. I don't understand it, but yes, gas does go bad. I had a generator. It was one of those cubed ones. It was a Champion. And I left that gas in there for 2 weeks. That's it, 2 weeks. And it corroded up the carburetor and messed it up. I wanted to run it on propane because propane doesn't harm the carburetor. You can leave propane in it for indefinitely, it doesn't matter. I disconnected it, I stored it, I changed the oil, brought it out, and tried to start it on propane. Now, there's a procedure to start on propane, and it's not that easy. First thing you got to do is there's a switch over here, and you got to run it all the way over to choke. And then you got to pull the rope 5 times. It's my understanding it's not supposed to even come close to starting when it's on choke. Sometimes it tries and then dies real quick, but you got to pull it that 5 times. And the reason is because you want that air out of the hose. You want just propane in it. So that's supposed to pull all that propane through the hose and into the engine. And then you take it over to propane. There's gas. So you have choke, then gas, and then propane, and then finally you would have off. And then you pull it and it's supposed to start. Well, I pulled and pulled and pulled on choke, and it didn't do anything. So I'd take it over there and try to start. It wouldn't start. I got pretty frustrated. Remember, it was raining. So I put a dash of gas in this to see if it would start, see if it was the generator or if it was the propane I was having problems with. Put gasoline in it, instantly started. One pull and it was started. Well, there is a trick to this. You can have it on the gas. You just switch it over to gas. And then as it's running on gas, you plug this in. It will instantly switch to propane. It doesn't matter what it's on, whether it's on gas or propane, and it'll start running on propane. As soon as I switched it over to propane, it kept running. I knew that I must have had a problem with the hose somehow or another. Wasn't sure how. But I didn't give it any mind. I ran on the propane the rest of the night. Well, actually, what I did, and this is how I know that it runs on propane even if there's gas in it. I wanted to run it out of gasoline. Remember, I don't want to store it with gasoline. So like I said, I only put a splash in it just to get it started. So what I did was I took it back over to the gas, unplugged it, and it went because it was running out of gas. I didn't put that much in it. As it was starting to die, I plugged it back in and it started right back up. And it was still on gas right here. So you didn't have to have it on propane. So that's how I emptied it out of gas. I just kept letting it run and then plug it back in, and that worked. I figured, okay, whatever problem it had, it must have been resolved because it was running on propane. It ran on propane for 4 hours. So this morning, I'm going to talk about the lawnmower in just a minute, but this morning I needed the generator to work on the lawnmower. I pulled the propane tank back out and I figured, well, it should run now. It's only been a couple days. I think it's 2 days since I've ran it. Tried to start it, wouldn't start. So I did the whole procedure again, put a splash of gas in it, started it up, put it on propane. Of course, I want to run it out of gas, so it's out of gas. Got it running on propane, worked on the lawnmower, shut it off, and I've let it set for several hours. And as you saw, it was running. I started it on propane. The difference this time was I disconnected it from the generator and left it attached to the propane tank. I shut the propane tank off, but I left it on. My theory is there's something wrong right here. My guess is that propane, or it's too cold or something, isn't engaging the valve. There's a valve right here that has to push in the hose. It's a safety mechanism. And if it doesn't engage, that's why you open it real slow. You got to open this real slow when you turn it on. I've turned it on, you would think propane would come out here. Well, it doesn't, because there's that safety mechanism. You got to get that safety mechanism disengaged. So I think there's something wrong with this propane tank, is my point. That being said, I don't have to waste the propane tank. If I leave this on, I know that it'll empty now. Or I can just prime it like I did with the gasoline. Now, there is a trick to this generator. When it's cold and it cools down, there's propane in the cylinder. Now, people have told me a million different ways to do things, and I've tried them all. Nothing works but this. You disconnect the propane, you turn it on propane, leave it there like you're going to start it up, and you pull it 5 times. And what that does is, since there's propane in the cylinder, as it cools, as the cylinder cools, there is now pressure in there. That propane is going to cause back pressure, so nothing wants to move in there. So if you pull this 5 times, after you run it, while it's still hot, you'll get that propane out of there. And then it becomes really easy to pull. Otherwise, it's near impossible. You see how that is tough to pull? There's compression lock in it somehow. But it's much worse when it's cold. So now we can store it, and there's no gas in it, no propane, and it should start up just fine next time. Okay, so this morning I came down here and the tarp was off the lawnmower for some reason. I really don't know why. Even after I investigated, I still couldn't figure it out. So I came down here to put the tarp back on, and the tire was flat. Now, this tire had a tube in it. It went flat the last time I used it, so I put a tube in it because the seal had broken off the rim, and I didn't want to figure out how to do that. You can put starter fluid inside the tire and pop it back into place, but I didn't have any, so I just thought, well, I'm gonna put a tube in it. Well, I did it without taking the tire off, and it was the first time I've ever done that, trying to leave the tire on, because it's a greasy mess down here, and I didn't want to get into it. So I was in a hurry, so I popped the tire off with the screwdriver, put the tube in there, and then I put it back in there. Well, when I did that, I poked a hole in the tube. Well, I had some slime, like Fix-A-Flat, I put in there, and I was able to air it up, and I turned the tire, and it sealed up. I really didn't like that. I mean, you got a tube in there, and the reason you have a tube in there is if you have a hole, you can get a patch. But here I didn't even have a patch. I was just put the tube on just a moment ago. So I had another tube, but I didn't deal with it. I went and finished cutting the grass. Well, I come down here this morning and it was flat. So my thinking was that the slime must have froze. Well, come to find out that it's not possible. I actually Googled it, but before I Googled it, I decided, well, I'm going to go ahead and change out the tube with a new tube, and this time I had a less sharp object, what I did was I had a little crescent wrench that I used to put it back on instead of a screwdriver. That way, if I did pinch that tube, that crescent wrench wasn't going to poke a hole in it. And this time, so it aired up and everything's fine. But the funny thing is I took the tube out. It was flat. I didn't test to see if it had holes in it or anything. What I was going to do, and which I did do, is bought a new inner tube. I don't like these metal valves. These are industrial strength valves. I wanted a plastic or rubber one that came through. So I went ahead and got 2 more inner tubes. Well, I came down here to test that generator, and I noticed that the inner tube blew back up. It blew up while sitting here. I guess it was just so cold that it deflated. So it's perfectly fine. I mean, it's a little low, but so there's no holes in it now. So I'm going to keep this one just as a spare. Not that I'll ever use it. I'm just going to keep it right here. And if I need something or even a piece of rubber, I can use this. So it just blew up right here on the property. Somebody asked me if I had winterized the lawnmower. And the answer is, yeah, kind of. In the wintertime, it sets more than it does in the summertime. Actually, that's not true anymore. I really don't use it that much in the summertime either. I don't use it any more in the summertime than I do, maybe a little bit more in the summer, but not much. Remember, we're hauling firewood around and chicken feed, so I got the wagon on it a lot. But it does sit here more, I think, longer periods of time. So I do put stuff in the gasoline to make sure it doesn't go bad. Now, what I use is Seafoam, and the reason I use Seafoam is because it's good for a lot of things. So it stabilizes the gasoline. It says it right here, stabilizes fuels. So instead of having to go out and buy a separate fuel stabilizer, I just keep cans of this around. This is nice to have around. So it's 6 capfuls per gallon of gas is what I put in it. I've thought about just treating all my gasoline when I get it home, but I don't know, it just runs up the cost. I don't think it's necessary unless I know the gas is going to go bad. This stuff is great though. I have a push mower up there that I hadn't used in a long time. The first year we got here, we didn't have this, so we push mowed this whole yard, and then I didn't use it anymore. Well, I thought I drained the gas out of that. I seriously thought I drained the gasoline out of it. As a matter of fact, there was many times I saw it sitting down there and I had it covered up, and I thought, yeah, it's taken care of. I've drained the gas out, it's fine. I just didn't need it anymore. Well, this last summer, Carolyn's son was here, and I needed to push mow around his camper. I couldn't get the lawnmower close enough to the camper to get a nice trim job. So I started to put some gasoline in that little push mower, and it had gas in it. Of course, it was terrible. It wouldn't start. It was a mess. I ran, I don't know, maybe a half a tank of gas with this in it. And it went rah, 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 the whole time. Didn't work. So I Googled it. How am I supposed to fix it with Seafoam? And what I was supposed to do, and I didn't do, was you treat the gasoline. So I put a lot of this in there. I don't know how much, I forget how much you're supposed to put in, but it says in the back. But I put a lot in the gas. And then you run the lawnmower for a few minutes. If it doesn't start, you just pull it a lot to get gas down into the carburetor, and then you let it sit for 24 hours. I did that, started right up, ran like new. It was great. So this stuff's pretty good. It does a lot of things, cleans injectors and carb jets, stabilizes fuels, controls moisture in fuels. I don't know if that's true. There've been a lot of tests on YouTube. I'm not sure how that works. Cleans deposits, adds lubricant to the fuels, lubes upper cylinders, and de-ices and anti-gels. So the lawnmower's treated, and I've never had a problem with it as long as I put this in the gas. That first year, I didn't treat it, so every 2 weeks I would come down and I would start it. I start it anyways. I want to make clear, I run this in the winter because I want to keep that battery charged also. I don't want to have to take it on and off, and those John Deere batteries are amazing. I've bought so many of those Walmart batteries over the years. They don't last near as long as that battery. That what, 3rd or 4th year now? So I deliberately keep the grass long. at the end of the cutting season. That way through the winter, I can cut a patch here or there, just kind of get the lawnmower moving around. Things are blowing up, not working right, but we're getting it all fixed. This is what happens when winter comes around. So if you click this up next box, take to a video where I was talking about becoming self-sufficient. It's really important. So hope I can inspire you. Work through your problems when you're living your dreams. Thanks for watching.